the notification light blinks on your phone. A message perhaps, an invitation possibly. The promise of connection, of distraction from that most terrifying of states, being alone with yourself. Your hand reaches for it reflexively, like a drowning man grasping for a lifeline. This panic at the prospect of solitude, this inability to be comfortably alone, lies at the heart of your persistent unhappiness. Ordinary people merely think how they shall spend their time. A man of talent tries to use it, Schopenhauer observed with characteristic sharpness. He was an advocate for solitude not as a last resort for the socially rejected, but as a deliberate choice for the psychologically evolved. For him, the quality of your solitude determines the quality of your life far more than the quantity of your social connections. Look honestly at your relationship with aloneness, the anxiety that rises when Friday plans fall through, the reflexive opening of dating apps when you find yourself with an empty evening, the background noise you maintain, podcast, music, television, to avoid silence, the elaborate self-deceptions you employ to avoid confronting the possibility that you simply don't enjoy your own company. Most men fear being alone because they're unable to provide good company for themselves. They'd rather endure shallow interactions with people they barely like than face the emptiness that solitude reveals. They use others as shields against self-knowledge, as distractions from the fundamental questions of existence. What am I? Why am I here? What matters most? The questions that can only be answered in the quiet of genuine solitude. The irony is crushing. Your fear of loneliness drives you into connections that leave you feeling even more alone. The party where you perform sociability while counting the minutes until you can leave. The sexual encounter that briefly satisfies your body while leaving your soul untouched. The relationship maintained not from love but from terror of being single. These are not cures for loneliness but metastasizations of it, loneliness multiplied by self-betrayal. Schopenhauer saw solitude as the only path to genuine self-knowledge. Alone, we shed the social masks we wear for others. We stop performing the various versions of ourselves, the confident professional, the caring friend, the charming date, and can finally hear the still, small voice of our authentic being beneath the social noise. A high degree of intellect tends to make a man unsocial, he observed, touching a nerve that many intellectually inclined men feel but rarely express. The smarter you are, the more difficult it becomes to find truly satisfying companionship. Small talk feels like sandpaper on your brain. Pop culture references leave you cold. Sports fanaticism seems like a strange religion whose appeal you can't fathom. The dopamine-driven, outrage-fueled discourse on social media strikes you as a mass psychosis that you can't bring yourself to join. That emptiness that creeps in when the notifications stop, when the noise fades, when it's just you alone with your thoughts. You've built walls of distraction but nothing fills that void. Arthur Schopenhauer knew this feeling all too well. In the 19th century, long before smartphones and social media, this German philosopher peered into the abyss of human existence and returned with insights so brutally honest they still cut through the noise today. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, Schopenhauer wrote. If he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom, for it is only when he is alone that he is really free. But here's the paradox that's tearing you apart. You hate being alone, yet you've never felt more isolated than when surrounded by others. The parties, the hookups, the surface-level connections, they all leave you feeling emptier than before. Why is this happening to you? Is something broken inside you? Or have you simply been sold a lie about what connection truly means? If you're feeling that chill of recognition right now, drop a comment below with the words "Schopenhauer was right." Let's see how many of us are silently suffering through this epidemic of loneliness. In the darkest corners of your mind, there lurks a force so primal, so ruthless, that it dictates your every move without you even realizing it. Schopenhauer called it the will to life, a blind, ravenous impulse that courses through your veins like an ancient current. This will isn't your friend. It doesn't care if you wake up dreading the day ahead. It doesn't care about the emptiness you feel on Sunday nights. It cares only about perpetuating itself through your constant, exhausting striving. Look deeper at the patterns of your life. That promotion you've been killing yourself for, the one that's keeping you up at night, making you miss gym sessions, causing you to cancel plans with the few friends you have left. Do you truly want it? Or has the will to life convinced you that without it, you're somehow less of a man? Every night, as you lie awake replaying conversations and scenarios in your head, the will to life sits back and smiles. It has you exactly where it wants you, trapped in a prison of desire that you yourself continue to build, brick by brick, day after day. Man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills, Schopenhauer observed with cutting precision. This is the brutal truth you felt but could never articulate. Your desires aren't even your own. They've been implanted by Instagram feeds showing lives you'll never live, by Hollywood portraying relationships that don't exist, by your father's unexpressed expectations, by the sidelong glances of women who assessed and dismissed you in seconds. Remember that dating app you opened 7 times yesterday? You tell yourself it's about finding connection, about meeting the one. But Schopenhauer would see through this delusion immediately. It's not about love, it's the will to life using you as its puppet, dangling the promise of physical and emotional satisfaction so you'll continue its blind mission of genetic propagation. With each swipe, you surrender more of your authentic self to this cosmic puppet master. Those career ambitions that have you checking emails at 11 p.m.? The will to life has convinced you they're about self-actualization. In reality, they're about competition and survival, proving your worth in a dominance hierarchy as ancient as humanity itself. And for what? So you can buy the slightly nicer apartment? The watch that signals to strangers that you're not a failure? The car that temporarily numbs the feeling that you're being left behind? This is why you feel so fucking tired all the time. It's not just physical exhaustion, though there's plenty of that. It's the soul-crushing weight of desires that can never be truly satisfied. You achieve one goal only to find the goalposts have shifted. You obtain the object of your desire only to find it doesn't fill the void as promised. Like Tantalus in Greek mythology, forever reaching for fruit that moves just beyond his grasp, standing in water that recedes when he bends to drink, you are trapped in an endless cycle of wanting. And here's the psychological devastation that Schopenhauer identified long before modern psychology. This cycle isn't a bug in the system, it's the system itself. The will to life ensures that satisfaction is always temporary, always incomplete. Because if you were ever truly satisfied, truly content, you would stop striving. You would step off the wheel. And the will cannot allow that. Think about the last time you actually got what you wanted. That job, that woman, that recognition. How long did the satisfaction last? Hours? Days? Before the familiar emptiness crept back in, before the will whispered in your ear that it wasn't enough, that you needed more, better, different? This endless cycle of desire and temporary satisfaction, followed by renewed, more intense desire, is why you feel so hollow despite having more material comfort than kings of old. You're a hamster on a wheel, running yourself to exhaustion, your heart pounding against your ribcage as you chase a reward that perpetually remains just out of reach. But what if you could see the wheel for what it is? What if you could recognize the will's manipulations for what they are? Not commands to be obeyed, but suggestions that can be questioned. This recognition is the first crack in the prison walls, the first glimpse of a freedom that Schopenhauer believed possible, even in a world dominated by the merciless will to life. The memory haunts you still, that moment when she looked at you with eyes that once held desire but now contained only distant politeness. You've replayed it countless times, wondering what you did wrong, what invisible thread unraveled between you. Schopenhauer would nod knowingly at your confusion, your pain. He saw through the romantic delusions that culture has force-fed you since childhood. Schopenhauer used a devastatingly accurate metaphor for human relationships: porcupines in winter. They need each other's warmth to survive the cold, but when they get too close, they wound each other with their quills. So they engage in an eternal, agonizing dance, moving closer out of necessity, inflicting pain through proximity, pulling away in self-protection, feeling the bite of isolation, then repeating the cycle endlessly, hopelessly. We are like porcupines who need to huddle together for warmth, but who hurt one another with their quills, he wrote in perhaps the most succinct description of modern dating ever penned. The words resonate in your chest because they articulate what you felt but couldn't name. Think about your last relationship, how you entered it with such hope, such certainty that this time would be different. The intoxicating early days when you revealed parts of yourself normally kept hidden. The gradual disillusionment as you discovered her flaws as she discovered yours. The subtle shift from passionate desire to comfortable routine to stifling obligation. The arguments that began to follow the same script, like actors hitting their marks in a play you never wanted to perform. And now look at the relationships around you. Your married friend who scrolls through Instagram models while his wife sleeps beside him. Your coworker who talks about his girlfriend with a mixture of affection and resentment. The couple at the next table in the restaurant, sitting in silence, each lost in their phones, connected to everyone but each other. Modern dating has weaponized Schopenhauer's porcupine dilemma to a degree that would horrify even his pessimistic mind. Dating apps have commodified human connection, turning potential partners into products to be consumed and discarded. We've created a sexual marketplace so efficient that it has become fundamentally dehumanizing, where your worth is determined by an algorithm, where rejection comes not through painful conversation but silent disappearance, where the promise of someone better is always just one more swipe away. The result? A generation of men experiencing unprecedented levels of sexual frustration coupled with emotional isolation, a combination Schopenhauer would recognize as psychological dynamite. You want intimacy without vulnerability, connection without risk, love without the possibility of loss. You keep everyone at the precisely calculated distance, close enough to serve your emotional and physical needs, far enough to protect your increasingly fragile ego from the pain of real rejection. This distancing isn't accidental. It's a defensive mechanism born of previous wounds. Remember how it felt when she told you she just didn't feel that way anymore? How your friend group mysteriously dissolved after your divorce? How your father could never quite express pride in you, always holding back that essential validation? Each wound taught you to keep your guard up, to reveal less, to expect disappointment. The tragedy is that this self-protection guarantees the very loneliness you're trying to avoid. By armoring yourself against rejection, you've made genuine connection impossible. The parts of yourself you refuse to show are precisely the parts that could be recognized and embraced by another. Your strength isn't in hiding your vulnerability, it's in having the courage to reveal it to someone worthy of the trust. When was the last time you truly let someone see you? Not the carefully curated version you present on social media. Not the stoic mask you wear at work. Not the charming persona you deploy on first dates. But the real you, with your fears of inadequacy, your childhood wounds, your secret ambitions, your capacity for both cruelty and tenderness. If you've ever felt more profoundly alone lying next to someone in bed than you do in actual solitude, Schopenhauer's porcupine dilemma has you firmly in its grip. The warmth you sought has become yet another source of pain. The quills have drawn blood once again. But Schopenhauer doesn't leave us in despair. Understanding the dilemma is the first step toward navigating it with wisdom rather than reactive fear. Perhaps the answer isn't finding someone with no quills, they don't exist, or becoming invulnerable to being pricked, impossible without becoming emotionally dead. Perhaps it's developing the capacity to feel the occasional sting without reflexively withdrawing, to recognize that some pain is the inevitable cost of the warmth that makes life bearable. That gnawing feeling in your stomach as you lie awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, wondering if this is all there is to life. Schopenhauer not only recognized it, he built an entire philosophical system around it. For him, life is fundamentally, inescapably suffering. This isn't cynicism or melodrama, it's arithmetic. In the ledger of existence, Pain overwhelms pleasure with ruthless consistency. Life swings like a pendulum backward and forward between pain and boredom, he wrote, capturing the rhythm of your days with devastating accuracy. When you're not actively suffering from rejection, failure, illness, or conflict, you're bored. And that boredom is itself a form of suffering, a hungering for meaning in a world that offers none inherently. Look unflinchingly at your own experience, the genuine moments of joy and fulfillment. How long do they last? Minutes? Hours? They're fireflies in the vast darkness of ordinary existence, brief, beautiful, and gone before you can truly grasp them. The rest is anxious striving, quiet disappointment, or deadening routine. The vacation you spent months planning is over in a flash, leaving only staged photos and credit card debt. The woman whose attention you craved loses her mystery once she's yours. The promotion that consumed your ambition becomes the new baseline, its satisfaction evaporating almost immediately. The two foes of human happiness are pain and boredom, Schopenhauer observed. You spend your life running from one directly into the arms of the other. Work is stressful and depleting, but a day with nothing to do feels like slow death. Romance brings intensity but also jealousy, insecurity, and eventually the torment of loss. Even friendship carries the burden of obligation alongside its comforts. Your ancestors had it easier in one crucial respect. Their suffering had clear causes and potential remedies. Hunger could be satisfied with food. Cold could be solved with shelter. Danger could be escaped through flight or confronted through fight. But your suffering? It's existential, psychological, abstract. You have a refrigerator full of food and still feel empty. You have climate-controlled comfort and still feel restless. You are safer than any humans in history and still feel perpetually anxious. The modern world hasn't eliminated suffering. It's evolved it into forms more insidious and resistant to solution. Your great-grandfather worried about providing enough food for his family. You worry whether your social media posts are getting enough engagement. He feared economic depression. You fear missing out on cryptocurrency gains. He struggled to attract a single viable mate in his small community. You face the paradox of choice among seemingly endless options, each rendered unsatisfying by the nagging suspicion that someone better might be one more swipe away. And social media, that innovation Schopenhauer would surely have condemned with his most vitriolic prose, has become suffering's most efficient delivery system. Not only do you experience your own pain, inadequacy, and emptiness, but now you're constantly exposed to carefully curated images of others' apparent happiness, success, and fulfillment. Every vacation you can't afford, every body you don't have, every relationship that seems more passionate than yours, every career milestone you haven't reached, all serve to you in an endless stream designed to maximize engagement through envy. The psychological toll is immense but largely unacknowledged. You've been taught that admitting to suffering is weakness, that good vibes only is a lifestyle rather than a denial of reality. So you swallow the pain, post your own carefully filtered photos, and perpetuate the cycle of mutual deception that leaves everyone feeling isolated in their private misery. Beneath the surface of your everyday consciousness, this denied suffering festers. It emerges as irritability toward those closest to you, as self-destructive habits. The drinks you don't count, the porn that consumes hours you can't account for, the money spent on things that bring no lasting satisfaction. As a pervasive sense that something essential is missing though you can't quite name it. This is the existence Schopenhauer described, a condition of perpetual wanting without fulfillment, of fleeting pleasures and enduring pains, of distractions that temporarily numb but never heal. And his most radical insight was that this condition is not a bug in the system, but the system itself. Suffering isn't something that happens to an otherwise happy life. Suffering is the fundamental texture of conscious existence. But here's where most people misunderstand Schopenhauer. This recognition of life's inherent suffering isn't meant to crush you under the weight of despair. It's meant to liberate you from the exhausting pretense that everything is, or should be, fine. There's a profound relief in acknowledging the truth. Life is difficult, desire is endless, satisfaction is temporary. When you stop expecting existence to be other than what it is, you can stop adding the additional suffering of disappointment to the inevitable suffering of being alive. The face that stares back at you from the mirror each morning, that collection of features you've come to identify as you, harbors a secret that most men spend their lives avoiding. Your individuality, that unique self you defend so fiercely, build so carefully, present so strategically, is largely an illusion, a temporary arrangement of matter animated by the same blind will that moves through all living things. Schopenhauer recognized that beneath our apparent differences, we're all manifestations of the same fundamental force. Your thoughts, desires, and fears that feel so intensely personal, they're patterns repeated across billions of humans throughout history. That unique combination of traits you call your personality, a temporary eddy in the eternal current of the will to life. The essential in everything is invisible to the eye, he wrote, anticipating modern psychology's discovery that the conscious self is merely the tip of a vast iceberg of unconscious processes. You think you're the captain of your ship, making free and independent choices. But the course was largely set before you were born, by genetics, by early childhood experiences you can't even remember, by cultural forces you absorbed before you could name them. Consider the elements of yourself you're most proud of, the aspects of your identity you cling to most tightly. Your intelligence, a genetic lottery. Your work ethic, largely programmed by your parents' example. Your taste in women, in clothes, in music, shaped by cultural exposures during your formative years. Even your rebellions against these influences follow predictable patterns. The counterculture has its own rigid conformities. The person you are is with you for life. It accompanies you as your shadow, which you cannot jump over, Schopenhauer observed. This explains the persistent patterns in your life that baffle and frustrate you. Why you keep attracting the same type of toxic partner despite swearing, "never again," after each painful breakup. Why you repeat your father's mistakes despite promising yourself you'd be different. Why the fresh start in a new city eventually produced the same old problems. Why the new job, with a different title and better pay, somehow feels exactly like the old one after 6 months. The common denominator in all your failures and disappointments is you. Not the superficial you of conscious intentions and New Year's resolutions, but the deeper you of unconscious patterns and drives. You can change your clothes, your address, your relationship status, your career, but you carry yourself with you wherever you go. And that self is far less malleable than contemporary self-help gurus would have you believe. This realization hits particularly hard for men in their 20s and 30s, who've been raised on a steady diet of infinite possibility. You can be anything you want to be, collides violently with the growing recognition of your limitations. Not just external ones like economic realities or social barriers, but internal ones. The traits that have sabotaged your relationships and career advancement for a decade aren't going to magically disappear through positive thinking or another self-improvement book. They're woven into the fabric of your being. But here's where Schopenhauer's insight becomes not depressing but liberating. This recognition isn't meant to crush you. It's meant to free you from the exhausting work of trying to be someone you're not. When you understand that individuality as you've conceived it is largely an illusion, you can stop the endless self-improvement project that has you constantly feeling inadequate. Every man in his 20s and 30s is fighting a silent, desperate battle between his desire to be exceptional and the growing realization that he probably isn't and likely never will be. You've been told since childhood that you're special, destined for greatness. But the brutal math of the bell curve means most of us are, by definition, average in most respects. And the social media landscape ensures you're constantly exposed to the statistical outliers. The most successful, the most fit, the most confident, the most everything, creating a comparison that's not just unfavorable but psychologically devastating. Schopenhauer offers a third path beyond this crushing dichotomy. Recognizing that exceptionalism itself is a trap set by the will to life. The drive to stand out, to rise above, to be remembered, These aren't noble aspirations but clever tricks the will uses to keep you striving in service to its blind purposes. True peace comes not from achieving distinction, but from recognizing the illusory nature of the individual self that craves it. This doesn't mean surrender to mediocrity. It means liberation from the tyranny of comparison. It means you can pursue excellence in areas that genuinely call to you, not because excellence will make you special, but because the activity itself is intrinsically satisfying. It means you can connect with others not as competitors or objects that might enhance your status, but as fellow travelers sharing the bizarre experience of temporary, individuated consciousness. When you understand that your deepest nature is not separate from all other living things but unified with them in the great current of the will to life, loneliness takes on a different character. It becomes less a personal failure and more a perceptual error, the pain that arises from mistaking yourself for something isolated when you are, in fact, inseparably connected to all existence. There was a moment, perhaps you remember it, standing on a cliff edge watching waves crash against rocks below, or lost in a piece of music that seemed to speak directly to your soul, or gazing at a painting that somehow captured an emotion you'd never been able to name. For a brief, electric instant, the chatter in your mind ceased. The endless wanting, the restless planning, the nagging inadequacy, all fell silent. You weren't thinking about deadlines or dating profiles or bank balances. You simply were fully present in that singular moment of perception. That state of being rare, precious, and increasingly elusive in our hyperconnected world was what Schopenhauer identified as our one true respite from the tyranny of the will to life. He didn't just diagnose the disease of existence, he prescribed a treatment. And his solution was radical in its simplicity: aesthetic contemplation. When, however, an external cause or inward disposition lifts us suddenly out of the endless stream of willing, and knowledge is delivered from the slavery of the will, the attention is no longer directed to the motives of willing but comprehends things free from their relation to the will. Then that peace, which we were always seeking but which always fled from us on the former path of desiring, comes to us of its own accord, and it is well with us, he wrote, capturing that transcendent experience with remarkable precision. When you lose yourself in art, music, or nature, you temporarily escape the will's relentless demands. In those rare moments, you stop being a wanting, striving creature and become pure perception. The boundaries between observer and observed blur. Time falls away. Desire falls away. You're no longer separate from the world but merged with it in a state that feels paradoxically like both losing yourself and finding your truest self. The effect of music is so very much more powerful and penetrating than that of the other arts, for they speak only of shadows, but music speaks of the thing itself, Schopenhauer observed. Have you noticed how the right song at the right moment can bypass all your intellectual defenses and touch something essential within you? How it can bring you to tears without your understanding why. That's not coincidence or mere sentimentality, it's liberation from the will's tyranny, a glimpse through the veil of individuation to the unified reality beyond. This explains why you feel truly alive standing on a mountain summit, why the vastness of the ocean moves something primal within you, why the perfect chord progression can send shivers down your spine. In these moments, you're not experiencing pleasure in the conventional sense, you're experiencing freedom from the endless cycle of desire and temporary satisfaction that constitutes ordinary consciousness. But modern life has systematically robbed you of these moments of transcendent contemplation. You check your phone during concerts, interrupting the very musical experience that might free you. You take selfies at scenic vistas instead of absorbing their beauty and power. You skim books rather than losing yourself in them. You've traded contemplation for consumption, being for having. The psychological cost is immense. Without regular access to states of aesthetic contemplation, you remain trapped in the will's chamber of endless wanting. Your consciousness becomes a closed loop of desire, brief satisfaction, renewed desire, never finding the exit to a different mode of being. This perpetual prisoner of want state manifests as the restlessness you feel even during leisure time, the inability to sit in silence without reaching for your phone, the vague dissatisfaction that persists despite having all your material needs met. Consider how you've been conditioned to value experiences primarily for their documentary value, for the social media posts they'll generate, the stories you'll tell, the envy they'll inspire in others. The sunset isn't beautiful in itself, it's Instagram-worthy. The concert isn't a chance for musical transcendence, it's content for your story. Even your most intimate relationships become performances for an imagined audience rather than direct experiences of connection. This instrumentalization of experience, viewing everything as a means rather than an end in itself, is precisely what Schopenhauer identified as the will's mode of operation. When you approach life this way, you remain firmly in the will's grip, seeing the world not as it is but as it relates to your desires. Aesthetic contemplation reverses this relationship, allowing you to see things as they are in themselves, independent of their usefulness to you. When was the last time you were completely present? Not documenting, not analyzing, not planning, not wanting, just being fully absorbed in direct perception? If you struggle to recall such a moment, you're not alone. The capacity for contemplative attention has become a casualty of the attention economy, which profits precisely by keeping you in a state of perpetual, unsatisfied wanting. Yet this capacity remains available to you. It requires no special training, no expensive retreats, no guru's guidance. Only the willingness to temporarily set aside the relentless self-concern that normally dominates your consciousness. The painting, the symphony, the mountain vista. These haven't lost their power to transport you beyond yourself. You've simply lost the habit of surrendering to their influence. Ordinary people merely think how they shall spend their time. A man of talent tries to use it, Schopenhauer noted. He was an advocate for solitude not as a last resort but as a deliberate choice. The quality of your solitude determines the quality of your life. Most men fear being alone because they're unable to provide good company for themselves. They'd rather be with people they don't particularly like than face the emptiness within. But Schopenhauer saw solitude as the only path to self-knowledge. Alone we shed the social masks we wear. We stop performing for others and can finally hear our own thoughts. A high degree of intellect tends to make a man unsocial, he observed. The smarter you are, the more difficult it becomes to find satisfying companionship. Your choices become stark. Engage in shallow interactions or embrace meaningful solitude. This explains why you feel drained after social events that others seem to enjoy. Why small talk feels like a waste of your limited time on earth. Why you crave deeper connections but rarely find them. Schopenhauer's solution wasn't to avoid people entirely but to be selective. Quality over quantity. Depth over breadth. A few meaningful connections rather than dozens of superficial ones. Look at your contact list. How many of those people truly know you? How many would stand by you in crisis? How many make you feel more, not less, like yourself? If there's a redemptive element in Schopenhauer's philosophy, it's his emphasis on compassion. Recognizing that we're all manifestations of the same will to life, all suffering in similar ways, can break down the walls between us. Compassion is the basis of morality, he wrote. When you truly grasp that others suffer as you do, that their inner life is as rich and complex as your own, it becomes impossible to treat them as mere objects. This is why volunteering or helping others often provides a satisfaction that pursuing your own pleasure never does. By temporarily forgetting yourself and your wants, you slip the will's leash. Modern masculinity has taught you that compassion is weakness, that it's every man for himself in a competitive world. Schopenhauer would call this delusion. True strength comes from recognizing our shared vulnerability, not denying it. The dating coach telling you to treat women as conquests? The hustle culture guru saying to step on others to reach the top? They're ensuring you remain trapped in the will's game of endless striving and dissatisfaction. What if the antidote to your loneliness isn't more self-focused but less? What if connection comes not from being desired but from seeing others as they truly are? Schopenhauer's most radical proposal was that we can achieve lasting peace only by denying the will to life itself. This is the ascetic ideal, renouncing desires rather than fulfilling them. A man can do what he wants but not want what he wants, he noted. You can't control what desires arise, but you can choose which ones to act upon. Consider how much of your suffering comes from chasing things you've been told you should want. Status, wealth, physical perfection, sexual conquest. What if you simply stopped wanting them? This isn't about becoming a monk in a mountain monastery. It's about critically examining your desires. Which ones actually bring you peace when fulfilled? Which ones lead only to new desires? Which ones were never truly yours to begin with? Modern consumer culture has weaponized your desires against you. It's created artificial needs, then sold you the solutions. Breaking free requires the courage to say, "This desire does not serve me. I choose not to pursue it." Every advertisement targets the will to life within you, promising that this car, this cologne, this clothing brand will help you survive, compete, and reproduce. Schopenhauer would urge you to see through these manipulations. When you stop chasing what you've been programmed to want, what remains? What do you truly desire when no one is watching? We've covered a lot of ground, from the will to life that drives your endless striving, to the illusion of individuality, to the possibility of freedom through aesthetic contemplation and compassion. So where does this leave you? With a choice. You can continue living unconsciously, driven by desires you didn't choose, chasing satisfactions that never last, building walls around yourself while wondering why you feel so alone. Or you can embrace Schopenhauer's brutal truth, that life is suffering, that complete satisfaction is impossible, that true connection requires vulnerability, and that peace comes not from getting what you want but from transcending want itself. The two enemies of human happiness are pain and boredom, Schopenhauer wrote. You cannot eliminate either entirely, but you can develop the wisdom to navigate between them. The next time loneliness hits you at 2 a.m., remember, you're not broken. You're not failing at life. You're experiencing what Schopenhauer recognized as the fundamental condition of conscious existence. The question isn't whether you'll feel lonely, you will. The question is what you'll do with that loneliness. Will you run from it through distraction and temporary pleasures? Or will you sit with it, learn from it, and allow it to connect you to the universal human experience? If this video has made you think differently about your own loneliness, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment sharing the most profound insight you're taking away from Schopenhauer's philosophy. Let's create a conversation that goes beyond surface-level engagement. Because in the end, perhaps the brutal truth behind your loneliness isn't that you're too isolated, but that you've been isolated in the wrong way, cut off from deeper truths about existence that philosophers like Schopenhauer spent their lives uncovering. The will to life keeps you running. But for a moment, right now, you can choose to stand still and see the wheel for what it is. What will you do with that vision?